So hello everyone and welcome to this next session. So I'll be starting soon. It's almost 4 p.m. So before I start, just a quick question. Does anyone have any doubts about what we talked about before? Okay, so I will get started. So just to speed things up, I just copy pasted these commands which I usually type. So just to make things faster. So I'll just start type this, just press enter and just get started. So these are the usual imports, importing NumPy, importing pandas, and then after that we'll just read our data frame. And this is where we stopped off. So we had created this data frame with two indices, right? And we saw how we created these two indices. We saw that genre was the most broad category with the least number of unique values. So we kind of guessed that genre would end up breaking up the data frame into coarse parts. And then we found that platform is the next you can say column with the next least amount of unique values. So we took that as the next index. So this is just one way of breaking up our data frame. So with respect to this, does anyone have any doubts about what we did yesterday? So this is where we left off. As before, when you take a group by, you could of course take the entire data frame, but just so that we have a data frame which is visible and is easier to like kind of navigate, I've chose only two columns, but you can take all of them. And of course I use mean just as an aggregate function so that we have the necessary columns. Okay, so now that we'll continue, there's one thing you'll notice. If you compare the actual data frame, original data frame with 16,598 entries, and you compare this new one with just 293 rows, you see that we have reduced our data frame by a huge amount, right? So like I said before yesterday, we have what we eventually do in terms of categorization need not necessarily be always the right thing, right? So for example, we had decided that we could break our data frame using these two indices, but you see what has happened. We have actually ended up losing data, right? We've actually crunched our data frame from 16,000 rows, 16,500 rows to just 300 rows. So it is good for now because we'll practice a few commands, but it's important to understand that this data frame, the new data frame that we created, does not represent our original data frame, right? So I'll just stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubts about what I just said? It's important to note that what mainly when it means when we create another index is to speed up the way we access parts of our data frame, right? We could always run raw queries, but remember, raw queries are brute force search methods, right? Brute force search methods, whereas searching by index is much more accelerated. But creating an index should not mean that we've lost data. And here that's what has happened. We've lost data. But anyway, we'll talk about that soon. So now the first question I'm going to ask is, I'm going to throw this open to you people, the participants. Now, tell me a query that you would like with respect to this index.
Maybe for a particular platform, which genre has the most NA sales?
Okay. So for example, first thing we can do is look for the platform. So let's say we have DF1. Now in DF1, how do you look for the platform? right? Now, platform is an index. What that means is I cannot say platform. This will not work. With video df, this will work. If I say video df platform, this is the original, it will work. Why? Because platform is a column. Here platform is an index. So now the first question we need to ask is, how are we going to extract this platform? So let's go over. First is what we use. There's several ways to do this. All right, there are two commands, and I'll just tell you what they are and then tell you. First is access, right? And you can just look at the help of this access. It returns a cross section of your data frame. So you can, if you have a multi-index, you can pass values to this and extract parts of your data frame. All right. Now this is perfectly okay, and you see these are your parameters. So there's a key, there is an access, there is a level, we'll talk about that soon, and there is a drop level. Again, drop level is different. Now just 1 minute, let me come down. Now access can be 0 or 1. What that means is it can be an index or it can be a column. Now level means the level of your index, right? So I'll just tell you what this is. The only disadvantage of this method is you cannot change your data. You can only extract data. Sometimes that's good enough, but sometimes you want to change things. This won't work. Anyway, let me tell you what that is. So the key access is equal to 0 is still okay, because this is indeed an index, right? It is a row index. So therefore access is equal to 0 can remain. Only thing is key. Now what is our key? We can say key is equal to platform. Now, what is the level? Let's come all the way up here. This is the index, right? First there is genre, then there is platform. Now, in this case, the level of the platform is, this is the second level. The first level is genre. The second level is the platform. Now, again, always remember in Python, NumPy, anything, indices start always at 0. So which means the level of platform is actually 1. So let's come down here and do it. Here, we just go up. Okay, let me put platform here as well. Okay, let me remove this key first, because key may be something else. Let me just do it. Key is a label or tuple. Okay. So now what we have to do is we have to give it a key. So for example, the problem with this is, let's say for example, we say 2600, right? That is a key. Now what key means is, this is the level, but we need a value to extract. So if I say 2600, remember, even though it is actually, it is a number, but here it is a string. The reason why it is a string is because everything else is a string. So even a number will get cast as a string. So we'll just come down here. And now you see, we are able to get, for this 2600, all the values of the data frame with this platform. Right? Now, I'll stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubts about what I just said? Basically, it has unbundled the data frame, and this command says, take all those rows for which platform is equal to 2600. So this is the key, the value for which you're looking for. And the level is the actual level within the index, right? And the reason why it's taking index is because axis is equal to 0. So I'll just stop for a minute and ask, does anyone have any doubts?
Can I not access the platform using the log function as well? Like, how
That's
is
what I'm
this
going to
better?
talk about. That's what I'm going to talk. The reason why some people prefer this is the lock method, and we'll see it soon, that has a slightly complicated, particularly if you have multi-index, it has a slightly complicated coordinate system. But my preference is the lock. So that's what we're going to talk about soon. But you will see this used quite often in data science. For example, if you see somebody's code, a lot of people, for some reason, prefer to use XS as compared to lock. So,
All right.
anyone has any doubt about this? Okay, so carrying on. Now, to talk about lock. In lock, what we have to do is we have to now specify what we look for in the platform, right? So, what we say is we want to find out, what was the question again? What was the suggestion, the task?
For this given platform, which genre has the maximum global sales?
For any one particular, like 2600.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's write it down so that we don't forget. For a given genre, or rather platform, find the genre with the max NA sales, let's say. So this is our task. So let's say that we have given a certain platform. That platform, let's say, is 2600, right? So for this 2600, how are we going to extract the total number, all these rows? So one was excess, the way we did, right? Now let's look at lock. In lock, what do we do? First, let's play around with the lock value. So let me just look at the data frame again. So this is our data frame. Now, in lock, we always use a coordinate system. So there is the row coordinate, right? So it's like this first one is the row coordinate, and the second one is the, just put a space here. The first one is the row coordinate, the second one is the column coordinate, right? Now, you do not have to specify both. You can specify only one, right? So for example, let me just comment this out for a minute and let me show you how it works with just the regular data frame. So this is our usual data frame. For a data frame like this, you could say lock, and you could give it two values. So for example, you could say, let's say 5, and you can say something like year, and it'll give you one value. All right. Now, you can alternatively also specify a list. So for example, what I'm saying is that I don't just want one column, I want a list of columns. So for example, I say NA sales, global sales. And it gives me back a series because it's giving me back 3, right? Now, there is one trick here. If you want to return a data frame, you should combine this in another list. So for example, your coordinate itself is a list. So if I do this, oh no, sorry. It's not the entire thing. It is just the column. This is strange. Am I doing the right? Yeah, it's video DF. Anyway, I will continue for now and let me see what this error is. From what I thought, you can return a data frame. Anyway, so you could pass a list of columns as well. And the same goes for the rows. So for example, I can say 5, 8, and I get back a data frame. All right. So all these are possible when you're using lock. Just try one thing. Maybe you have to put a bracket around the row instead. Yeah. Okay. So if you were here, for example, we had returned a series. Like for example, if you just return this, you get a series. But you can put the row inside square braces, and you get this back as a data frame. So for example, I could even take this query and just wrap my row in square brackets. So you're saying that this is actually a list, even though I'm passing only one value. If you're passing it back as a list, then this lock assumes that you want back a data frame. So in that case, it'll give you back a data frame. All right. So again, I'll stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubts? We've still not gone into the multi-index, but I first want to start with the simpler one, that is a raw data frame. Okay, so since there is nothing, now let's get to this. So we could do exactly the same things with this as well. So for example, I could say df1.lock, and I could say, now how will I do it? This is where it gets interesting. I now have two indices. All right. When you have two indices, you have one option. First is you can specify just one. And if you specify one, it takes the very first level. So for example, I could say strategy. All right. And the second argument is not necessary, so I can skip it. So I can just say strategy. And it gives me back those rows for which the first one, that is a genre index, is equal to strategy. So it gives me back these rows. All right. So stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubt? Remember, this method is only possible if the level that is being indexed is the very first level, that is the 0th level. All right. So stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubt? Okay, let's keep going. Now, what if I want to access a combination, right? So let's say we go all the way up. I want to access strategy and X360, right? Now what will I do? When you want to access two coordinates in a multi-index, you need to enclose them first, always row and column. Always remember, lock is always row and column. You need not specify the column, but in that case, we can delete it. But first, always the structure is this. Now, within the row, if you have a multi-index, then you have to specify a parenthesis. And within the parenthesis, we can specify the indices in their order. So strategy is a genre, right? So that comes first. And then X370, 360 is the next one. So we can say X360. And of course, if you're not interested in the columns, we can delete it. And we get back this. Okay. So again, I'll stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubt?
Sir, does sequence matter, like a strategy X360?
Yeah.
Can't I do X360 and then strategy?
No. The reason is because then you'll get a key error. So for example, let's say switch this because it looks in that order the way you access your data frame. So if I switch it, it'll give me an error because it will say I can't find X360 in this genre category.
Okay, sir.
Any other doubt? Okay, so now to carry on. How will you access the second level in just this? So for example, let me copy this one. And let me place it here. We get this. What if I don't want to specify this? Now, if I just do this, you'll get an error, right? Because if you don't specify anything, then it is equivalent to saying that you want the first index itself. So it's a key error. So it's looking for X360 in genre and it's not able to find it. So it gives you a key error. Now, what else can we do? There is one other way, and that way is what is called as list. So for example, let's say for example, now what I'm going to do, there are several ways to do this. We'll look into it. The lock is actually primarily key based, right? So you can use the lock with the square brackets. But there is also another way to use lock, and that is by using lock with other arguments as well. So here again, I would say look through the documentation of lock because there are lots and lots of ways to use it. But look at what this is. This is multi-index, right? Now in multi-index, you can access your indices, and I'll just come all the way down here, I believe. Yeah, you can access your indices using this colon. All right. So the main thing here is we need to know what our colon is. Where should we start? Where should we end? So for that, what we're going to do is if I say df1 index, this is what I get. All right. So I'm getting action and I'm getting strategy. All right. So now in index, right? So let's say multi-index. Now in this multi-index, what if I want to extract one of them? Again, I'll stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubts about what I'm saying? It's just that I want to spend some time with this because it is in the documentation, but almost nobody talks about it. This is this kind of secret method which is kind of hidden away in data science and nobody talks about it. There is nowhere in any tutorial that does this, and it's sometimes a little frustrating. Like for example, how do you extract using lock? But you only have to go figure it out from the data sheets or rather the documentation. So if we look into this, this is a multi-index, and a multi-index we can specify several of them. So for example, supposing I specify genre. Okay, you can't call it. Let me try genre. Okay, so you see what's happening. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find out how we can extract all our indices. See, the reason is in data science, there are of course always the option of writing code, right? So I can write the code. What I want to do is I want to find out all my indices. Now, it appears like as if action is the first and strategy is the last, right? Because look at this, these are dots. That means it is continuing. It starts with action and it ends with strategy, right? So I'll just stop for a minute because I've been talking quite a bit. Does anyone have any doubts about what we're doing? I understand this is a bit confusing because this is like sort of hidden away in data science. So please do ask any questions if you have any.
So we started off with the like how did it end up here?
What I want to do, what I want to show you is the challenge we have is, let me go up here. For a given platform, find the genre with the maximum NA sales. And just an example, it could be global sales, it could be anything, right? Now, I want to show you how we can extract this second index in a multi-index data frame.
Got it.
So what I'm trying to say is, can we extract this data frame? Now, one way is guessing, the other is using code, but let's do this first. Supposing I know, let's say using this, right, using this basic method, I know that the first index in the 0th level is action, and the last one in genre is strategy, right? Because there are dots. There are several probably, but doesn't matter. Now, what that means is I could extract it. Always we'll put a comma. We can extract it using a colon method. So what that means is we can specify 2 indices. These are row indices. So which means there will be a coordinate method. So for example, what I'm trying to say is it will be action and it will be strategy. Okay. Now, I'm not really that interested in this. I'm going to delete it. What will happen if I do this? I am getting my entire data frame back. Why? Because I am only specifying the very first key that is of strategy, that is of genre. But this is not what we want. We want to find out for a particular platform. So let us choose one platform. Let us just say, let's say 3DS. Let's give another example. So supposing I say 3DS oh no, this is comma. Now, see what's happening. It is giving me all the platforms with this particular, what do you call it? Starting from action 3DS all the way up to strategy 3DS. But there's one problem. We are including all the platforms, right? We want not all these platforms, we want only 3DS. Okay, now I'll stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubts about what we did?
How are we getting all platforms if we are specifically mentioning one platform in our index?
The reason is this is a slice operation. So a slice operation means it starts at a particular row and continues until a particular row.
Oh, okay. All right.
So any other doubt? Okay, so let's carry on then. Now for 3DS, we want to extract only the platform, right? So let me just go over and check out some of the documentation. And I just want to show you this because I want to show you how you can look for particular documentation. So let's say pandas. When you want to do a Google search, we say pandas. And then after that, we say extracting rows according to level of index. Okay. Now, you see there are several ways. And I would suggest go through this kind of documentation because this is a great way to learn what exactly is going on. Let me just open this. So one of them is this method. All right. So for example, you just see it's something called get index level. It doesn't seem very. Then let's look at this one. This is called multi-indexing. And I would suggest look into this, right? Because this documentation, this kind of documentation of pandas has a huge amount of examples, right? And this serves to help you exactly how to extract stuff. So for example, this is showing how about indexes. So here it is about indexing. So check this out. We are looking at indexes by in this particular manner, right? So for example, defined levels. Now, we need to extract a particular level, right? So what that means is we are looking at this kind of extraction, and this is exactly what we also saw in the previous in some form of the, what do you call it, in the help when we saw in Jupyter itself. But I would strongly suggest look through this, right? And the reason why I say look through this is because there is a huge amount of tips and tricks that you can get with just this method. All right. So here, let me go back here and show you the method here. This is called as slicing, right? So let's look at this method of slicing. So you see what has happened here. They are taking a slice. All right. So in a slice, you are specifying something which is very strange. Look at this. Look at the, what do you call it? The syntax here. The problem what we are facing, let's just go back to this. Here's my data frame. So what we are facing is that it is impossible to extract only one. And for that method, for that reason, we use something called as indices. See, I just wanted to gradually go to this rather than simply jump and show you that method. The reason why we need to do this is because if you want to select one particular one out of this, it is very difficult to do so without this kind of index. Okay, so let me use this index. So first we have to define an index and then we define this. So let's say, for example, I will say pd.IndexSlice. Let's just copy this. Okay. We index the slice and then we come here and look at the help again. You see, we can specify a lock, but we can now give a colon for everything. So we don't have to look at the first coordinate. Now I'm going to do this and we'll show you exactly how this is done. So let's go up here, back to my data frame, and let us use lock. Now instead of directly showing the index, we say idx colon 3ds. Oh. Let me just go back and see in the documentation. This is quite normal in data frame, that is you're like trying to find something. Okay, let me just look at genre first and see what we get. We are almost out of time, so after this I will just wind up. So let's say we just take action. So you see we are now getting action. So this is okay. So let me also put this coordinate and see what happens if we get 3ds. We do get something, right? So now the question is, can this be a colon? The reason why this doesn't work is, apparently, the reason is there are some rows which do not have this 3ds, right? So let me just, supposing for example, I say colon colon, you get back everything. Okay. Now, there are different ways. Now, for example, I think I'm going to end this here. So let's have a little bit of a Q&A session rather than me going on. Does anyone have any doubts about what we were doing so far? The reason why this is complicated is because multi-indexing in general is complicated. So go ahead. I mean, the last few minutes, we can just do a Q&A.
So what exactly is IndexSlice doing over here?
So IndexSlice allows you to specify a wild card. So for example, in the previous case, you cannot specify colon. So for example, if I use this method, I cannot specify a colon anywhere. So for example, I cannot specify something like, how do I say? I cannot specify colon, say colon here. That's not possible. This is simply not indexed. Because this, when you use lock, you are specifying a coordinate, always. So you have to specify hard coordinates. In an index slice, it is now allowing you to specify your index as slices rather than actual hard values.
So basically, this is like a filter process. You
Yeah.
filter.
It's like in NumPy also, right? Or even MATLAB or anything else. You use colon when you want to get all the rows, all the columns, right? But typically, you can't use it in a multi-index data frame because you have to specify your actual row column coordinate. But when you use IndexSlice, it gives you the same functionality as with regular NumPy arrays.
So we'll have the next class on Monday.
Yeah, we'll have the next class on Monday. At the same time, I would suggest that also be on the lookout for a slightly bigger challenge maybe. What I would like to do is from on Monday, we can just solve this problem, wind up this particular data set, and we can launch the next one. And from Monday onwards, we can do it every alternate day so that we can have some time to actually solve the challenge. So this way, because now that we've gone through this much, I think most of you must be now fairly comfortable with pandas and data frames. So now we can try to take a real world problem instead.
Okay, we got it.
So I think we are almost out of time. So I will just say goodbye and try to spend some time reading the documentation. So otherwise, I'll see you all on Monday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
sir.
sir.